we had to maintain all three routes. One, secure funding. B, maintain commercial business as usual and acquire new customers and carry on with existing ones. Three, explore potential acquisition conversations that came with opportunities that turned out to be interesting enough to explore.
Hey everyone, welcome to the How I Got Here podcast. I'm your host, Trevis Waters, and I designed this podcast to share stories that are worth telling, whether it's about somebody going from zero to hero, hero to zero, or simply something in between. On today's episode, we are joined by Karolina, whose career started in the brick and mortar casino space, transformed into the online space, and now where she is today as a successful published author. Let's go ahead and jump into our conversation with her now. Enjoy. Hey guys, welcome to the How I Got Here podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Karolina. And for those that may not know you by name or by face yet, let's just do a quick, maybe 10-second high-level overview of what you're working on, where you're at right now in your career in 2026.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Trevis. I am Karolina Pelc, as mentioned. Currently, I define myself or identify myself as a book author primarily, but I also invest and mentor startups, advise investors and VCs. But at heart, I am and always will be a founder that loves building products. This is 26. In the industry, I'm probably known mostly for my work on the operator side, where I spent the last 20 years. And I hope we'll get to that journey a little bit, so I won't spoil it just yet.
Yeah, sometimes, every once in a while, we'll have an episode where I say, hey, let's do that quick 10-second high-level overview, and they give the entire, resume career. I'm like, no, wait. But yeah, I appreciate that. So let's get started by going as early as possible that your memory allows in terms of when you first had any kind of concept or notion of this is what I want to be when I grow up, this is what I want to do when I grow up, or just anything that was of grand interest, and roughly how old were you when you had that thought?
So I was 6 year old and I was at a staff party at the casino where my father was an inspector and I got to hold a roulette ball in my hand. That is when I thought I want to be a gaming casino director one day or a startup founder. No, that really happened. I was in a casino at 6 year old. Obviously, it was, a fun event for families of employees. But I don't think that I had a thought I wanted to work in this industry for about 10 years after I already worked in it. I kind of always assumed that this was a temporary detour from my predefined career as a journalist, lawyer, or whatever my parents dreamt up for me to be when I was planning to go to university. Um, so yeah, I didn't want to work in this industry. This industry didn't exist when I started working. So my very first day at the job was at the land-based casino, where I was a dealer and dealt, roulette, blackjack, in a typical brick and mortar venue that most of your American listeners will know from Vegas or Atlantic City. Uh, and this was just a way for me to pay through my university. It was not a career choice, it was a job. That was all it was. Um, and then sort of it went from there unexpectedly. And I think the time where I realized that this is what I want to do is good 15 years later, in a more senior position when I switched to product, because it is building products that really caught my passion and started to um, feature very prominently in my future. And I guess that would be the defining moment where I thought iGaming is what I love doing and what I'm good at and what I will be doing for a while still.
So you were introduced to I guess, the gambling industry with the brick and mortar casinos at an extremely early age. Now, I know you mentioned that when you had this first introduction, it was never anything that was like, ooh, I want to be part of this when I grow up. And you kind of were mentioning, I believe, the journalist side. So is that what you went to the university for, was journalism?
Yeah. I studied journalism. I was a writer at heart since early childhood. I was very good at humanist subjects, and that was always something that I thought I would be doing. Um, but then I sort of ended up in the casino by my own choice. I'm not going to give full details because my book is about all the details of my journey, and I do want to leave some spicy parts for the readers. But I guess when I started working, it is also when I realized that I'm more interested in making money than studying. Studies was something that I was introduced to as a means to become someone in life. And I decided that I think I can find a different route to become someone without spending years in an old building learning things I wasn't interested in. So I quit university not once but twice because I first took a gap year, then I decided to quit for good. Zero regrets about that because at the moment I am a writer without a journalism education. I think that's the kind of talent that is either in you or not. But yeah, it was very early, and I guess the timing of it was also quite interesting because I was 19 on my first day at the brick and mortar casino, and it was just about the time where I wanted to quit the industry when online gaming started to become prominent in the UK because I eventually moved to UK also to work in land-based casinos. And then I worked on the cruise ships as well for another 3 years. So I spent good 5 years behind the tables in various roles before making the switch to online gaming.
So, on the journalism side of things, how early did you, like, before you actually applied for the university and started taking classes, how early along in life were you like, this is what I want to do? I want to be a writer of some sorts.
Always. Ever since I remember. I wrote diaries probably from the age of 6. I remember the shops with like the pretty envelopes and nice papers and little locked diaries were my absolute favorite places to go to. The smell of pages. The other favorite place was a library. I consumed books at a speed that not many children at that time do. And I wanted to be a librarian at first because I thought that will give me a proximity to books. But later on, I always wanted to be writing. And even in my adult life, when I already worked in the industry, I did toy with writing. At first, it was something completely separate from work. So I had a culinary blog, I had a travel blog when I traveled around Philippines, and I did backpacking around Asia. Sounds so cliche, but I did do backpacking around Asia. Uh, and later on, it was more sort of for the industry publication. I started writing articles, and I started to appear more in media. That turned into speaking, that turned into podcasts. But I find this all being a combined part of general fondness of the art of expression.
So I know you mentioned that you kind of worked yourself through university by being in the casino, the dealer and everything that you mentioned, and you quit university twice. On that first time when you took that gap year, was it more of a dislike or distaste towards like the classes, like, oh, why am I doing this stuff? This is so boring, or was it more of, oh, this place that I'm currently working in to pay through school is actually much more interesting? So how was that like dilemma of deciding, was it one you liked more or just one that you liked the least?
No, I wouldn't say it was the place that I worked at because I worked in a land-based casino, which wasn't in those times, mind you, it was 22 years ago, a friendly environment for a young woman at all. Now I moved to London in the meantime to take up a job in a London-based casino, and that was first of all much more friendly, much more respectful, better money, but also I really enjoyed London. It was such a vibrant city, compared to Warsaw and the Eastern Europe where I came from. And I just decided not to go back to studies because I wanted to enjoy more of that life. And then the cruise ship opportunity came up, and that, completely took me by surprise because I never even heard about work opportunities like that. And all of a sudden, I found myself, on a massive boat sailing between Caribbean islands and South America, Alaska, and working with young people and having so much fun. that really the decision of whether I should stay at the university or leave wasn't even a decision. It was just an act of, hey, I'm not coming back.
Fair enough. So I definitely want to tap into that the cruise opportunity. So for me on my end, I actually was an entertainer, a game show host on a cruise ship. But
Fun.
I'm trying to see if there's an overlap here on timeline. What cruise line were you on?
I was on Celebrity Cruises
Okay.
from Royal Caribbean.
So I spent most of my time on Norwegian cruise line. I was like, man, what if we were like on the same ship and we didn't even
Yeah,
know it?
that,
That would have
that,
been crazy.
that would have been funny.
Uh,
Although
so
I do have friends in the industry that I met on the cruise ships, and I made the leap into online gaming first and way before them. But then I did sort of encourage them that this is the great place to apply their transferable skills, and now they both have quite well-functioning careers of their own. So there are some people that I meet at events that I did have an overlap on the cruise ship with, but they are really good friends. That's a little bit different story.
so I believe you said you were only on the cruise ship for what, about 3 months?
No, no, 3 years.
Oh, I guess I missed that part. So 3 years, and did it end because it was just the end of the contract? Okay, I did this, I did the contract. Now I'm gonna move on to the next stage of my life, or kind of why? Because it seems like you enjoyed your time on the cruise ship, which maybe have a misunderstanding on that part. But kind of how did that part of your career end?
I enjoyed it until I didn't. I hit a ceiling, and I think, I was always oriented at growth. And also, I think the older I got, the more I realized this wasn't the final destination for me, and I wanted to do something else. And at that time, I still thought that without that university education, I will never be able to do anything else. So I decided to go back to London, and on my last contract on the cruise ships, I applied for UK universities. I got accepted, and this was sort of the defining point for me to resign and get back to what I thought was going to be a more standard sort of career path. But that purely ended up with me going back to London and realizing I can't afford to study full time without working. So I ended up in land-based casino again, trying to pay through university and figuring out that yeah, this doesn't work. Working full time and studying full time for this many years is just not sustainable. So I quit university for the second time then, and I only went back to school good years later as a mature student. So I didn't go back to a traditional university. I went back to vocational studies, professional studies, what they're referred to in the UK, where I could study something that I was already working with. It was practical knowledge and it was based on my work. All the assignments were actually work projects. So it made more sense to me. It was more practical and better use of my time in my view back then.
So I'm trying to make sure I have the chronological timeline down here because I know you said you kind of dipped your toes in a lot of different pools within like a 10-year segment. So I want to kind of go back to something you mentioned before where you were saying that you just loved writing. You were creating blogs for different niches. You had a cooking blog, you had a travel blog, and then you mentioned you were traveling or backpacking around Asia. Now, was that more of your mindset to make that decision to do the backpacking around Asia? Was it more of I have a travel blog and this is going to feed the travel blog, or is that more of part of the I need to take time for myself and figure out like what I want to do, like a mental clarity trip, if you will?
You're gonna love reading the book. I have to send you one because it's all in there. It was neither. The backpacking around Asia was sort of, I don't know which one was first because, as I told you, when I left the cruise ships, I went back to London to study. Um, I think I lived in London for about 4 years. I finished those studies and then I moved to Manila in the Philippines because that's when I already entered online gaming and I was working for a London-based online gaming company. And they also had offices in the Philippines where sort of we were transferred to set up operations and introduce, the processes back from the UK. And I took that job driven by two reasons. One is that was a product opportunity, and I really wanted to move into product, and that transition was easier to do in a new office where there was less experienced candidates than back in London. And the second thing was I was looking at Philippines as the part of the world that I haven't explored, because on the cruise ships I've seen the whole
Right.
left side of the world when we're looking from a sort of Poland or Central Europe perspective. And I've never gone to Asia, Australia, that part. And when I saw Philippines as a location for the job, I thought perfect. So I can move the product and I can spend all my free time, weekends and holidays exploring the part of the world I have not yet seen. So it wasn't driven by the blog. I'm not. I don't think I'm that crazy for content, but it was driven by my passion to see things that I haven't seen before, both professionally and personally.
Yeah, I mean that's also a huge part to working on a cruise ship in general, which I know you kind of a limited amount of ports you're going to, but it's the opportunity to kind of see a lot of stuff. And every time you go
Yeah.
back to a port for the next itinerary, you want to try to do different things in that location. So correct me if I'm wrong, but this opportunity in the Philippines was the first online gaming step that you took.
No, it was in London. In London, I worked in online gaming for about 3 years.
Okay.
Starting from the very bottom, I was a VAP sort of account manager, then junior marketing manager, junior CRM manager, and then I started to make moves towards product. So I kind of worked in business roles. Philippines was my first business analyst, so sort of junior product role. And it went from there. I did 2 years in the Philippines, and then I moved to Malta, where I spent 7 years working for the companies most of you would know in the industry.
So from my understanding, which I think I have everything down pat now in the chronological timeline, is the dealing on the in the casino on the cruise ship for 3 years. Was that your last stint in the brick and mortar side of gaming?
Last meaningful one, because when I went back to London, and before I got into online gaming, I had a detour into a completely different industry, because actually, when I applied for online gaming jobs straight out of casino, I got rejected or ghosted based on over 100 emails, I think. I know these stats because I researched them very recently to write the book. So I basically took a job in a different industry that was offered to me by a friendly customer from the cruise ship. Very junior job, but it gave me the office manners. It taught me how to use an
Right.
email systems and things that are required in an office. And while I was waiting to get that job, I did a couple of months in a land-based casino in London. So that was really my final stint in land-based, but I didn't enjoy it at all. I was done, especially after cruise ships where the clientele is friendly and they are there to have fun, and it's very American based. Being back in the less friendly environment of people who are there for different reasons and motivations was just not for me. I couldn't bear any hour of being there.
So I don't want to spend like too much time talking about the cruise stuff, but just I have this itch to ask what your itinerary was when you were on the ship.
It was everything. I've done uh, the whole Mediterranean, Scandinavia, around South America, Alaska, both sides of Caribbean, coastline of US. So pretty much, yeah, I managed to maximize places that I've seen over those 3 years. I think, again, I pulled out some stats for the book that I've been to Venice 17 times. So
What do you think was your favorite port out of all the ones you went to? And I promise that's the last cruise question.
my favorite port was Ushuaia in South America. I absolutely loved it. It's a sort of the most southern part of the world, and it's stunning with it horse riding on the beach and through the forest, and the food is amazing, the landscape is amazing, and it's just it was very, very different for me from anything else. Obviously, Caribbean was also the very first time I've seen this sort of luxury type of resorts and beaches back then. But nothing has impressed me or blown me away as much as Ushuaia.
When you are working in the online gaming opportunity in the Philippines, how did that Malta opportunity come to be?
Um, you're making me give away all cliffhangers from the book, so
I'm
I can't.
sorry.
I Yeah, I'm not gonna tell you. And listen, I can't blame you that you're lost in the chronological order because the original version of the book was this thick, right?
Yeah.
It's 650 pages of my timeline. Now it's shortened to 300. But let's just say timing and synchronicity work. And also, by the time I was in the Philippines, I had pretty versatile CV, and I knew how to sell myself. So there was also a time that I realized that the time in Philippines is coming to an end for various reasons, both personal and just. I'm not sure if I felt the expat culture was something I felt comfortable in long term in there. It was far from family as well and friends from both UK and Poland. So the opportunity started to appear, and I waited for the right one. I wanted something that is going to make use of my combined marketing and product expertise and is going to give me a good jump in seniority as well. And I really wanted a cool brand. And I actually moved to Malta for the brand that I probably still to this day find as the second coolest brand on the market because it was BetSafe back then. I don't know if you recall. I mean, this was the brand with wingsuit flyers and gamble race drivers, and I got a BetSafe branded snowboard outfit as a head of casino on my second day, and I was like, yeah, I can feel this being a good job for me.
So so when you first moved to Malta, just to make sure I'm keeping up with the time from then to now, what year was that roughly when you had your first opportunity there?
I had this timeline in front of me. Now I can't recall. I would think this was 2014.
Okay. So I'm trying. I know. I mean, I haven't read your book yet, which I'm definitely going to now, so I can get all these golden nuggets that that you're keeping away from me right now. But so on this chronological timeline, we're in 2014. We're in Malta. Uh, I know you said which originally called BetSafe, working with them. I'm trying. I believe somewhere around this timeline is that kind of where the Beyond Play came from.
No, no, no. So I worked for BetSafe, part of Betsson Group, and then came LeoVegas. I joined LeoVegas at the time where they were still relatively small. I think that was employee number 100 when I joined, and it was just me and the founders in the casino team, and one guy that was there from the beginning, Martin. And I spent almost 3.5 years at LeoVegas. So the idea actually came to me when I was at LeoVegas, but the company wasn't started for a good 6 years after because I founded BeyondPlay in 21. I started working on the concept in 20. So there was still a few years in between. So that was the time of LeoVegas. As I said, that was my number one coolest brand in the world, and always will hold a very sentimental place in my heart because I was part of such a big journey with them, the evolution from a small company to IPO and then being acquired and acquiring, and so much fun times with them. And after that, I ran a consultancy. I had a kid on my last year in Malta, which was also a major driver for me to move back to UK because I wanted a little bit different climate and more green spaces with a small child. And that's when I opened my first business, but I was a solo sort of director of a consulting business where I join companies for anything from 3 to 12 months in various capacity. But it was my first stint at running my own business, and Beyond Play came when I got sort of bored of the take it or leave it nature of consulting. I kind of never saw the fruits of my work. I just gave advice, and I didn't really have much influence on whether that advice will be implemented or not. And I was used to roles with more control and more accountability, I guess.
So do you when you look at kind of how the term I always use in these podcast episodes is brain babies. So when you first kind of were cultivating the brain baby that became Beyond Play, was it more of what you pulled from this consultancy of wanting to have more control over the ideas and the decisions, or was it more pulling from your time in Malta with this something doesn't exist in this space yet, and I need to create something for this space?
It was pulling from every single thing I did in my career, which is why I wrote the book about 20 years of my career. Because, when I sold BeyondPlay, people started to ask me, how did you come up with the idea? How did you sell it so fast? And, what's the recipe to sell the company in under 3 years? And there isn't one. And yes, I operated and sold it in under 3 years, but I feel that I was learning to run this company for the 20 years prior. So the idea for BeyondPlay was combining my experience from land-based casino, where I saw people playing together, interacting together, sharing the experience together. It was combined with my experience from marketing, where I knew what type of engagement tactics players respond to. Then it was combining my experience from product, where by default I was a gamification and bonus product manager. So that exposed me to sort of the technical side of how to make things more engaging, and what creates that additional anticipation in players. And then lastly, my consultancy and the leadership roles that I held towards the end at Betsson, BetSafe, and then in LeoVegas made me realize that I do want autonomy. I want to be end-to-end responsible for what I'm building, both marketing and product and P&L and the finance. So I guess it all came together at some point and made me think, actually, I have a pretty decent competency set to be able to run my own business. And I'm going to give it a try. At that time, I didn't know how many things I don't know, and I will have to learn. But again, I guess that was the superpower I always refer to from Jensen Huang: naivety, first time founder naivety. I'm glad I didn't know what I am about to embark on.
Going back to the consultancy, I know you said you kind of had these stints where you were helping these companies out for months at a time. What out of all of the things that you helped with this consultancy agency in terms of helped other companies, what was like the primary focus point that companies were hiring you for?
Oh, it really differed. I think, my time at LeoVegas made me, and I'm going to say it completely unhumbly, an in-demand professional in the industry. I was getting job offers left, right, and center for anything from B2B to organizational audits to COO to product director. So I really could choose. Some companies would hire me as a consultant without knowing what they wanted me to do. And they asked me, can you please define what is it that you're going to help us with? And I did that because I'm a fair and ethical person. So I didn't take advantage of it. I think at that time, definitely my product and sort of loyalty and gamification expertise was something that stood out. And the second area was definitely live casino, because at LeoVegas we spend a lot of time innovating in that space, especially on mobile, working very closely with leading providers. So I had a lot of experience in the area and a lot of ideas yet still. So this was something that a lot of companies wanted to tap into, and I loved working on that. And I had access to people with great expertise to help me out. So I would say these were the most important parts that I was involved in.
Now stepping into the Beyond Play era, the so many things I love about doing these podcasts. One of the biggest things is kind of finding the parallels between my adventure and someone else's as well. Not we already kind of talked about that we both did the cruise ship stuff, but on this, in terms of you were saying you kind of collected all of these pieces of your resume and kind of put it into one or combined all the skill sets into one opportunity that became Beyond Play, and how I feel like I'm in a very similar boat where when I explain it, just because I'm a huge Marvel Cinematic Universe fan of all the movies they put out, I always refer to it as the Infinity Gauntlet with Thanos and the glove, where my entire life I'm collecting all these stones, and I find like, oh, I have all the stones I need. I can actually launch my own company now. Snap my fingers, even though that's not the same context as as the movies, but people get the gist of that. So that's very interesting to hear that you kept dipping your toes in all these pools, but you collected skill sets from each of these life experiences that kind of became into Beyond Play. So let's kind of get into that now, where you kind of gave us the gist of why you felt it was necessary to bring that into the space. Let's kind of go through those just I guess highlights or tidbits of that 3 year journey from launching and kind of to eventually getting it acquired.
Yeah, that's the part I haven't managed to chronologically organize in my head yet because, I wrote the book and initially it was supposed to be a book about the startup journey. And then I set out to write 60,000 words and I had 60,000 words in the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And initially the first version is 150,000 words and it ends at the day when BeyondPlay got started. So I actually didn't get to cover the journey. That's going to be book number two, the sequel. But there's a big reason for that as well. Is I was working in such high pace and there's so much stress that I don't remember all the events that were happening in what order. Obviously, I can talk about some highlights, but when it comes to like describing the journey in a very detailed and thought through storytelling way, I haven't got there yet. So I'll tell you things I remember. Of course, it was that I loved building the team. We experienced high growth in this company. And I didn't set out on an easy journey because from the beginning, I really wanted to sort of transfer my passion for gender diversity into the company. So I was particularly seeking a competence from women to join us. Not that I would prioritize women in hiring processes, but I wanted to make sure that we make a lot of effort to find if those women, if they were out there, suitable candidates. And I loved building that team. And I remember vividly sort of us going from 3 people to 6 people, then 12, then 24, then 48. And that's when I stopped enjoying it. It was too many people, too much drama, and my open door policy became a reason why my psychotherapist needed an open door policy for me. I remember, we were going through constant fundraising because the moment we would close the first round, I would be worrying that we don't have enough of a runway and I'm going to put my team at risk. And then we decided to build another product. So we needed more money. And it's a constant journey, right? You only hear about when the startups are closing the funding round, but you don't hear about when they're starting it and how many times in between they get rejected. So I feel like I was in that roller coasters of raising for 3 years straight. I remember obviously building our products and all the challenges that were coming with it, and the unexpected twists when we had to redo half of the architecture. I remember the product launches. We launched on a big scale, especially when it comes to Jackpot, because the multiplayer actually didn't launch eventually. But our Jackpot product launched on massive transactional volume because we launched with LeoVegas Group, supporting all their brands and all their markets all at once. So that kept me up at night for a good few weeks with the risk of incidents and the internal fear that I have to be there on first light support to make sure that it's handled correctly if anything happens. And then you've got the whole, licensing process. We were a business that required licenses. We were falling in between regulations and different licensing regimes between countries because we were trying to do something that was undefined product definition wise. So that on its own was an extremely complex, stressful, lengthy, and expensive process. But when those licenses were landing, this was like, Christmas Day for the whole company. And I even remember jumping into a pool while I was on a short holiday when the license came through unexpectedly in front of the whole team, because just that was the only reaction I could think of.
So going back, going back to the chronological timeline here. So it was a 3 year window where kind of everything that you just divulged was all packed within a very short time frame.
That's
And
probably 20%
yeah, I
of
was
what
like, that's
happened.
probably not even the whole story. So
Yeah.
in this time frame, anybody that is in the space knows that Beyond Play eventually gets acquired 3 years afterwards, but I'm curious about that point now, because I know you still your second book's going to kind of go through more in depth on those specific 3 years. But at the end of it, was there were you kind of gauging interest from multiple sources, or did you kind of focus in on this individual? This is the company that makes the most sense to take this brand and to elevate it and all that stuff. Kind of how was that process in terms of landing on the eventual acquirer?
We weren't seeking sale. It was sort of the opposite way around that it came, that opportunity, and we did have plan B and plan C. And at the same time, we had a plan for what happens if we don't get acquired at all, because we were raising our next round at the same time, and that was going on in parallel with all those conversations, and even in parallel with due diligence. It had to. We had to maintain all three routes. One, secure funding. B, maintain commercial business as usual and acquire new customers and carry on with existing ones. Three, explore potential acquisition conversations that came with opportunities that turned out to be interesting enough to explore. So this was all happening at the same time. But yeah, the one that acquired was the only one that I really wanted as a buyer. It's I mentioned other brands as my favorite brands in the world purely because I spent much more time in there in different capacity. But this was a very not, I wouldn't say ego, but it was a brand I aspired to, and I knew the team there. I wanted to be part of the team. So deep inside my heart, it was the only one that I wanted to materialize. But I had to keep leverage by having options.
Well, I know you said earlier that LeoVegas is your number one favorite brand, and you kind of were mentioning a little bit of that 20% of this 3 year time span where you had the partnerships with them. They kind of helped, in some extent, help BeyondPlay grow a little bit. So I mean, all of that can make perfect sense. So um,
They were
now
also my first investor. They were also my first backer.
that's also that's
Well, a
yeah.
corporate backer, because my first investor was an agent from industry, very well known. But they were the first corporate backer, which then came with its own complexity. But yeah, there are a lot of reasons why, it's sentimental attachment to the brand, not to the company anymore, because the company has evolved since. There are different people, different strategies, but the brand is something I will always remember fondly.
So at this acquisition time, chronologically speaking, what the year we're in is early 2020s.
Yeah, acquisition wise.
Yeah, was it
No, no, no. Acquisition
2023?
was 24. Founding was
24.
21. Acquisition was 24.
Gotcha. So in the talks of this acquisition, because I know, so you acquired with by FanDuel, and then you have the role of VP thereafter, and I'm curious how heavy was you not just continuing on by uh, working with the company that's acquiring your brain baby that you've grown to this big in 3 years, but how do those discussions go of that led you essentially to getting this VP role?
Well, I think this wasn't even a matter of discussion. They were acquiring the company and the talent that came with it. And I'm not just talking about myself, but the whole team, right? This was a team of carefully selected individuals that were complementing their existing skill sets, and they could see that they're gonna be able to elevate, their existing work with additional capacity. The discussion was very easy. We were always going to stay on board. And how was the journey? It was both easy and hard. It was hard from the perspective of a founder that needs to learn to let go of control and gradually starts withdrawing themselves from the, ultimate decision maker role. Easy from the perspective of we had a lot of things agreed upfront, and a lot of promises were kept. And considering how many horror acquisition stories I heard, this wasn't one of them. So I could say there were both sides. One, it's more personal, and I think it's hard every time in every acquisition for every founder. The other one, I think it was quite seamless for a long time. Obviously, with its own challenges on both sides, as always, but they weren't to the extent that I've been warned about or was actually worried about. So, all in all, I look back at my time there, you know, with it was emotional for me, but at the same time, I was fulfilled still running the company and being there for my people, working on the products that I envisioned and seeing the one of the technologies launch on the biggest brand in the US with such spectacular success, supported by their marketing efforts. It was a great feeling.
And so now in 2024, this gets acquired. You take on the VP of FanDuel role, and then I believe I don't have the exact month of 2025, but at some time last year, you eventually that role or you step down. I don't know if that's correct terminology for that, or if it's just part of the contract. So kind of how when you know that your time in that role is transpiring, I know that you wrote a book, but it's so interesting to me because the first thing you ever wanted to do in life was be a journalist. And so you kind of went this full circle of doing all of these things that may not be directly considered journalism, but bits and pieces of it. And then you finally complete this amazing storyline of all this time of Philippines and cruise ships and all this other stuff. So now we're here. We're no longer having an active role in the space in terms of like working for an actual operator anymore. Did you already know? Oh, I guess let me rewind. Let me rephrase that. How early on into this 2024 to this book eventually becoming written did you know that, oh, I'm definitely going to be writing this story into a book?
I knew I will write a book all my life. I just didn't know when because I wasn't sure how I will frame the book and how I would end the book and why would people want to read the book. I needed a little bit more encouragement, and I think the spotlight that came with the acquisition was that encouragement, and not just from the industry, but from people that I met outside of the industry that found the story interesting, which now I know they were right because the book has landed in the hands of over 300 or 400 beta readers from all walks of life. And the feedback comes back pretty consistent that it's a really interesting book and a valuable book. But I didn't know this at the beginning. For the first year, I was fully focused on running the company as you would. I took some additional responsibilities within the central Flutter group, of meeting with the brands and checking the demand, and also, contributing where I could when it comes to product innovation. And then I started to write the book sometime in January. So what, 6 months after the official acquisitions, in my spare time, because I was so used to working so many hours that I couldn't get used to this decreased workload, and I needed to fill my time with something else to I don't know, fulfill the dopamine addiction. I don't know, maybe it's not the right way to say it, but I just needed something else. And only when I started writing it I realized how much I want to write it. So that started to consume my weekends, my plane travel, my evenings. At the same time, I was feeling that I'm more and more ready to hand over the company. The people are more and more ready for me to leave, and at some point, if the time comes to say goodbye, it's going to be on mutual agreement from all sides, right? So when that time came, I committed myself fully to do this on a commercial basis, because initially it was just a hobby project that I wrote, I published myself, I took it to Necker Island to give to Richard, which I'm sure you've seen the pictures from. But it's only after I left my full-time job where I decided, okay, now I want to do it properly. I want to have a publisher. I want to launch a marketing campaign, and actually write a second book and build sort of the ecosystem around it that consists of speaking and a mentoring platform, potentially some products in the future. So it crystallized as I was becoming more free and had more brain sort of space to think and strategize.
So I believe you mentioned earlier that the first one covers, I guess just I mean the beginning all the way to I believe you said the launch of Beyond Play. So that's the storyline of the
The
first
day
one.
that, yeah, yeah. Well, again, spoiler alert. So,
What?
but before the startup times, yeah.
Okay, and then the second one that you're gonna be working on is essentially just picking up like the sequel. It's just picking up from that point and going and bringing it to present day.
Yeah, it
Uh,
will be the startup journey and also like everything that happened after because I think this is also an interesting matter. Not a lot of people talk about the life post exit, whether that's small or big. A lot of things change in your way of thinking, and you experience a lot of different feelings. And you know, for me, it was a complete process of reinvention into a writer and speaker, which still to this day surprises a lot of people. Why am I not, you know, in some high profile job or building another startup? Um, but for the first time in my life, I don't need to go after what people think I should do. I can go after what I feel I want to do. And that's precisely what I decided to do.
So now that we've caught up through the entire journey, now here to early 2026, the question I like wrapping up these episodes with is if you were to go back through this entire timeline, there's a bunch of events that occurred where some were in your control and some may have been outside of your control. The terminology I use for this is the butterfly effect. So all these different butterfly effects keep you going to a point to get you to where you are today. So if you were to look through all of this stuff that we just covered from your initial visit to your first brick and mortar casino to now working on your second book, which individual event, whether it was in your control or outside of your control, do you contribute as the biggest butterfly effect that kind of moved the story to where it is now today?
And this is where I'm going to be an a-hole on your podcast because that is the part I will not tell you because that is precisely how my book is structured. And I will point people towards specific characters in the book that literally make that shift for me. There are a couple of them in different chapters, and it's very clear what shift happens with each one of them. So I cannot spoil it because you know my story is well known already. So I need to keep at least the way it's being told
Yeah,
a secret. And to give it to spice, I will say that a lot of these things are also inked in my body, on my body, as a defining milestones. So. I guess, Travis, you're gonna have to wait for the book
I guess we
to
gotta
read
wait.
about those exact moments. Yeah.
Fair enough, fair enough, fair enough. Well, I appreciate you coming on and telling as much of your story as we could get here during this episode. If anybody wants to reach out to her, if you're watching this on our YouTube podcast playlist, we have her name on the screen. And if you're listening to this on any other audio podcast as well, feel free to message her if you have any questions about anything. And once again, thank you for hopping on here, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. And I'm gonna do a sales plugin because
Go,
that's what I'm
go
here
ahead.
for. So please, you know, the book is already available on pre-order on Amazon worldwide, US, UK, also Waterstones, Target, Barnes and Nobles. If you want to follow me for latest updates, I post a lot of things on LinkedIn, on business, but I'm more active these days on building my community on Instagram at stories at Pelt. It's a small community to start with, but you'll find a lot of behind the scenes from startup, book journey, investing, mentoring, everything that I do these days, as well as some of my philanthropy and paid forward type of work. So I welcome for you to follow me if you're interested in that kind of stuff. And thank you very much for having me. I look forward to being on a podcast again when you read the book and we can, and the book is out there and you can ask me challenging questions about certain details that are revealed in there.
I was just say when that second book is complete, I need the first copy of it.
You've got it. You've got it. I signed. I'll post it directly.
And you have to highlight specifically, like referring to the butterfly effect, like in the first page of the book, you move to page 235, and then
I
it's
will write you. Someone literally asked me recently to please tell them what was the best piece of advice that I have received in my career and the piece of advice I give to people right now based on my career. And I just literally pointed him to pages where that is written in the book because something I want to highlight, you know, you've heard a lot of my story in this podcast. So the book is written as my story. It's not a 10 steps how to, it's not a business or startup manual. So you will see a lot of these stories in a very cinematic detail, and a type of detail that I haven't revealed in this podcast. But most importantly, there is a lesson that comes with each one of those stories, that people already told me they relate deeply to, because it's one of the most authentic pieces I have ever written. And it's not a book just about me. You'll find the psychology of resilience, the the history of certain words in our language. You will find evolution through generational drama, neuroscience of failure. So there is a lot packed into those pages than just the story of Karolina Pelc. I am not that arrogant to write such a long book about myself. It's a book about many interesting concepts, woven, is that the word, even,
Woven, yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, woven together by my story.
So yeah, I look forward to getting that second one. Well, I mean also the first one, but seeing the second one as well, so I can see that full chronological timeline in much more great detail. But the detail again that you were willing to share with us, we greatly appreciated, and thank you for being on here for this episode.
Thanks again, Travis.